Do you want to be able to read the board and understand what strategies are available to you in the board game Rome Total War? Then stay tuned to find out more. Hi everyone, are you bored through? We're bored through, and here at Bored Through, we're all about the gameplay. And today, what I want to do is to go into a little bit more of the strategic aspect of how to play the game. And in particular, what we're going to do is to take a look and see how it is that we can maneuver around the board, or even before then, to interpret the board to see what strategies are available to us, what are good options for us to be able to continue to expand, and what things might not be available to us, or might be available to us with some risk. But in order to do this, we need to make a series of assumptions. So the first assumption is that you do want to expand. If you've already consolidated and you want to sit and do nothing, then this doesn't really matter. That you want to avoid battle. So there might be situations where you're actually gunning for another faction, and that you do want to have a battle, and therefore that's going to change what this looks like. But the assumptions for this is that you'd want to avoid battle at the moment as you're expanding. Also, that you don't want to lose regions. If you're happy to go ahead and concede certain regions, well, that's going to open up your ability to move your armies. But we're going to assume that you don't want to lose regions. That you're friendly and allied, that the friendly and allied factions that you have will allow you to move. So we're going to make that assumption as well. Although you might want to keep in mind just how likely it is that you might be betrayed, and therefore that's going to change the way that you're going to read this board. The fifth assumption is that your enemies don't want to lose regions. Well, kind of the same thing as well, and therefore they're going to try and defend those regions. So if they have any armies that are close by, that they will come to their aid if you move into that region. And the final assumption we're going to make is that your enemies or neutral factions want to prevent you from moving. So with those assumptions in mind, that means that we can go into what this actually looks like. So what is it that we're actually trying to do? What we're trying to do is we're trying to understand movement on a spectrum. So the spectrum down at this end on the left here, with the red, is that basically you can't really move at all, and then up at the other end is that you've got very, very open movement. When we're talking about this, we're talking about movement in the next 1 to 2 turns, because the reality is that actually if you span it out and over the course of 3 turns, any army or any fleet would be able to move across most of the board, and therefore it's likely to be pretty closed, or have a pin situation across 3 movements. So this is only really relevant for looking at the next turn, or in 2 turns time. But in particular, let's start to look at this. So we're defining a situation that is closed, which means that we're not able to move at all. So say for example, if an army hits a physical barrier like a sea area, then they're physically not able to move, or they cannot move without battle. So in particular, if there's an enemy who's in a region. In fact, if they come across any other faction at all and move into their region, then that's going to cause a battle to take place, and therefore those situations would be closed. We refer to it if it's pinned, if they're not able to move without the risk of losing a region. So you move an army off to somewhere else, and then an enemy army would come in and have the opportunity to take that region off of you, or the risk of a battle. So that is perhaps if you're moving in the same direction as another faction's army, and they might take the opportunity to try and attack you as you're kind of passing by. We're going to refer to maneuverable as when you have an army that can move without the risk of losing a region, or that there isn't a risk of battle. But that we still have to keep in mind that things could change very quickly. Your allies could become your enemies very, very quickly. And then open is when you're able to completely freely move, there's absolutely no barriers to that. And that is that you, one, can make a valid move, and two, move without a battle taking place. So now that we've got all of that in mind, let's actually go and apply that to an actual board situation. So the situation that I've got here, what I'll do is I'll keep these up whilst we do some of these examples. And then once we've done a couple of these examples, I'll take this down and we can look at what this looks like across the board. You'll see what I've done up in the top left hand corner is I've actually put in the relationships between each of the factions, because that's going to be crucially important in understanding how to read this board. What we want to do from now then is we want to start to establish for each of the armies on the board, what options are available to them. So let's start off with the barbarians and say that it's their turn this time. So let's first of all take a look at the army that is sitting up in the top left-hand corner. It looks like it's just about to go up into Britannia. And the thing to note with that is that what's going on up here is because they can move across there, there's a strait, and there's no risk of battle. It means that movement up into this area here and into any of these regions is completely open, which means it's nice and safe to be able to do that. Another thing to keep in mind is that when it comes to moving across the board, we need to keep in mind that enemy armies might actually come and try to go for us. So in the next turn, if we consider that Rome, let's say they did a beeline for us and they went 1, 2, 3 up here, we can see they actually are not able to attack us any further up, which means that we're also open to actually maneuver across the top of the board. And let's just see one. So it's 1, 2, and then it depends whether you want to consider that they have the opportunity if they've got a forced march card. If you want to count that in, that adds a little bit. It makes it a little bit more conservative. In this case, that's what we'll do. So we'll play a bit more conservatively. So we'll consider that they might go 1, 2, and then they've got 3, and so we have forced march card. That will make it 4, which means the movement up into this area here, that they've actually got maneuverability, but they're not actually completely open if they move in that direction. When we come down here, so we've got the Roman player going 1, 2, 3, 4. So they've also got what we actually find is that coming down here is that there is a little bit of a risk there. So that's when we're going to put that if they moved down into here, that would leave them pinned. So if we went 1, 2, 3, 4, but in the next turn they are actually then completely open, say to move to here and to here, and that's open as well. That's open as well, and so if they went 1, 2, and then 3, 4, or they had to try to go for that army, this is also free to do. So we can keep that in mind. Maybe one thing to note that is a bit more obvious, so I won't be talking about this all the time, is that of course they can't go out into the sea area, so that is completely closed for them. So even if they went 1, 2, 3, and a 4, it's like they can't go out into the sea area. So I'm not going to keep doing that over and over. So what I'm kind of showing you there is just about the options for this army. So what that means is that this army is completely free to move if they want to take advantage of the sky. So check out my video on the sky movement strategy. They're free if they want to go up into Britannia. There doesn't appear to be anything that is going to stop them there. And they're also free to move down into these regions here. So if they wanted to, so say they were wanting to go south into the Iberian Peninsula, then they've got that open to them. They have an option to be able to move through this middle section here, but that's going to put them at a little bit of risk when it comes to encountering the Roman army that's sitting there. We can also take a look at how, so if you're going out to there, then you can see just that there's additional kind of risk that is going on there, and they've actually even got the opportunity that they can move down into there, and they can even move over to they can even move down here, but moving down here again, leaving them at risk of being pinned, if they don't want to move their army away from the Romans, just in case the Romans try change their mind and actually try to attack them. So coming down here means that that army might actually get stuck. So you've got to be very careful about that. If you want this army to be free and moving, then you can see here the options that are most open to you, and you can move those, and you don't have to worry about anyone encountering you. This one incurs a little bit of risk moving across these areas here. And then, of course, if you're moving straight down towards the Romans, then that's when you're going to encounter the most risk overall. If they move down to here again, risk of being pinned there. And so the Roman army could go 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means that there's a risk of getting pinned in there as well. So that's all the options that are kind of available for that army sitting there. So let's take all that away, and let's take a look at this army that's sitting all the way over here. So we're going to go through quite a few examples of this. So as you can see, they've got pretty much free reign to be moving all over the place, all in these directions here. Do they have freedom without very much risk at all? We can see that they are friendly with the Greeks, so we're going to assume that that means that the Greeks are going to let them move around. So what that means is that we don't have to worry, but what we might have to worry about is if the Greeks want to expand up into these areas here, and then what risk that kind of poses for us. So we do need to be cautious of this Roman army over here. So again, if we're looking at 1, 2, and then 3, and then even 4 is not going to be able to get you all the way over there. So there is a bit of freedom, so we can see that actually what they can do is they're able to freely move down into here. But then if they were to move, whoopsie daisy, let's undo the last one. If they were to move over to here and to here, that's when you're getting into the risk that you're going to end up getting pinned. So you've got to be cautious about certainly the order that you would make those moves into. We can see the Roman army can go 1, 2, and again, so you have a risk of getting pinned over here as well. Of course, as you can see, this is going to be closed to them. They can't move into this region because that's where the Greek army is. There's a Roman army down here, so those are completely closed at the moment, so you're not able to move into those regions. But what we can see is that we actually are pretty free to move down into these regions here, just like that, because we are friendly with the Greeks. That's not going to be an issue. And so that's really good to know, and certainly for this barbarian army, where being able to access the sun, as I refer to it over here, check out the past video on that, and to be able to get up those mercenaries, then absolutely it's great to see that they've got a lot of flexibility in being able to do that. Being friendly with the Greeks has offered them that opportunity, because this would look completely different if they were enemies with the Greeks or just neutral with the Greeks. That would mean that these would be much more hazardous, that they would have maneuverability into these regions, but then likely to get pinned after that. So that's going to be quite tricky. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually just going to, right, take that away. I'm just going to move these definitions out of the way so we can actually start to see what this looks like in other areas of the board. And I'm just wondering what's happened, because I can see that some of my components have shifted around a bit, but that's absolutely fine. What we can do is we can just put some of them back out as we're going to explore those. So we're maybe thinking about this barbarian unit down here. So as we can see, movement into this region right next to him where the Roman army is, that is completely closed at the moment. Where he's sitting right now, he's sitting in a position where he's pretty much pinned, so that's not a great position to be in. Huge risks of just coming into confrontation with the Romans there as they want to expand. They'll be pinned if they go here, they'll be pinned if they go here. They would even be pinned if they tried to move backwards that way. They'd be pinned if they're over here. It's only till once they are able to move off into go 1, 2, 3, 4, move off in this direction that they're actually no longer pinned anymore. Now, if we
So
take a look at this
4,
army down here, and we won't do all the armies, but I think it's good just to get people to get a range, so we can see what we're talking about here. So, for the barbarian to be able to move down to here, can't do that without starting a fight. We can also see that they're enemies with the Carthaginian player here. So that's going to limit their ability to move. At the moment, you can actually see that they're pinned. If the Carthaginian wants to expand into that territory, they're at risk of loss within that situation there. So they're pretty much pinned in that position and therefore not very maneuverable to be able to move away. They're also going to be pinned if they come here, and as you see, the Carthaginian army could go 1, 2, 3, so they're pinned if they move in that direction. If we're saying there's 4, then they're pinned going in that direction as well. What we can see is that they actually have the opportunity that um, they could move down into here. Again, that's going to leave them pinned, and basically everything in that direction is going to leave in a situation where they would be pinned. So what you can see is there's not an awful lot of maneuverability without the risk of the Carthaginian either coming in and taking advantage of the space that's been created, or that they might actually try and fight the barbarian army that's advancing towards the south. So as you can see, the opportunities that are available to them there are actually quite limited in that respect. So the problem with that is it means that you've got an army that is pretty much stuck, and so unless you're building it up to go into battle, and that you want to try and change this maneuverability by trying to destroy your enemy's army, which is actually very difficult to do, then you're pretty stuck in this situation. At which point it's maybe here where we want to be thinking about going the diplomatic route with the Carthaginians, whereby if we don't have ambitions of going into the Iberian Peninsula, maybe what we do is we actually try to strike a peace deal with the Carthaginians. And that way, that's going to free up that army a little bit more. Because if you can get them not just from neutral, but into maybe the friendly, or even turn them into an ally, then that's going to open up that army to move to just any other part of the board, so that they're not completely stuck in that region, in that that small part of the board there. For now, you're going to have to leave an army here just in case the Carthaginians try to make an advance. Just as the first army, the second army that this army up here that we looked at, it's kind of stuck unless they can improve their relationships with the Romans, because they can't move away from there. So that means that half of your ability to expand the two armies that you've got, you're stuck. That's armies that are now just sitting, not able to do anything, and in fact that you're going to have to now build up, because the Romans and the Carthaginians might be building up their armies. So there's a bit of an arms race taking place there. So two very expensive armies sitting, doing absolutely nothing, with lots of investment put into them. Which, by the way, if you get attacked and you lose, then might not actually mean anything. So you do want to be thinking about, if I'm going to be fighting with some of the other factions on the board, who am I actually wanting to be fighting with? Because you can't fight with all of them, um, and so you want to be able to maneuver armies, get to a point where you've exhausted your ability to be able to move much further, then go to the diplomatic relationships, then shift the armies around so that you're able to make some more gains in other places. Let's come and take a look at the Carthaginians. I think they've got quite an interesting kind of game that's going on. So as we see down here for this army, they can't expand into there without getting attacked. As we say, we're going to assume that the enemy are not going to be willing to give up with a fight, so they can't move in. So this is pretty much closed up here as well. Well, pardon me, it's pinned because they can move into it, but there's just a very high likelihood of risk of battle taking place there, and so we can see that actually they're pinned in those directions. But this army could go 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if we say that 4 means that moving into moving into the whoops daisy. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Right, so they'll be pinned if they go here. So if this barbarian army went 1, 2, 3, 4, so they're going to be pinned if they're moving to any of these regions here. As we say that they're going to be blocked going here, but they do have the opportunity to be able to move towards the south without any problems whatsoever. So they'll be able to move back here without it being a problem, move back here. Any of these places would be absolutely fine. So they're able to move away from this situation, but they can't really move forwards or towards the north or to the west without immense risk. And maybe what they actually want to do is they maybe want to move into this region where they could be pinned, but at the same time, they might be able to ensure that the barbarian army can't advance without getting pinned itself. And so that there's some really good reasons why you might want to do that. Let's take a look at the other army that's sitting down there, and it's got a bit more maneuverability. So as we say with that barbarian army, that the chances that they could come in means that they'd be pinned if they moved up into here. They'd be absolutely fine, completely open to be able to move into here. Now, when I've talked about battle, I'm talking about battles with other armies. I'm not talking about conquest, because you're always just going to have that situation with conquest. If you, in your own personal way, wanted to downgrade this into maneuverability, then absolutely. Then you could think about that. If you even want to think about it as closed, but then that's not necessarily going to be very meaningful otherwise. So they'll be able to move into here, but actually what you can see is that they're going to be pinned moving in a few other directions. So if they went over into here, they're going to be pinned. They're going to be pinned if they go there. They could end up pinned if they move directly into here. And then apart from that, everything else is then safe for them to be able to move, so they can move back towards the south, no problem. They even be able to move into there. Okay, so you can see that it's actually possible to move into an area where you'd be pinned and then out to an area that's actually safe. So you need to think about that in terms of your full range of motion and what's available to you. So you can see just there what that could look like. They could even go up towards the south, whereas you can see moving up into here means that they're going to be closed. But actually, let me represent that just a little bit better. So, whoopsie daisy. They would be able to move into here, and that would be okay. Well, they can't move into here whilst that army's there. That's the only thing you need to keep a note of as well. That's within the rules. So if they move up to here, that's going to create conflict immediately. That's going to create conflict immediately. That's kind of looking at what a turn 2 could look like. So you can see the flow of everything there. And I said I wouldn't come back to this point, but let's just do it just to be absolutely obvious. It's like go into that. Can't go into that C region. Can't move into here. It's just not within the rules to allow them to be able to do that. And even if they come up here, that's like they can't move into there. They can't move into there. But I think that's quite obvious. So you can see the sort of range of movement that is available to them down there. Let's actually go over to some of the ships and see what that looks like. So as you can see, this Carthaginian fleet down here is actually it's completely closed at the moment. It's not able to move because so long as there is the other Carthaginian fleet sitting out in the sea area, it's not able to move out there except for briefly for a reorganize action, and then one of the fleets has to be able to move on from there. So at the moment it's kind of sitting closed unless it moves and does a reorganize action. So that's just something to keep in mind, that you could have a situation here where you've got a fleet that is actually going to be pretty useless, and your enemies might be able to take advantage of that as well. That's something to really keep in mind. So let's now just take that off of here, and let's look at the other fleet. So that other fleet at the moment is in a situation where it's sitting and it's pretty pinned because of this Roman fleet here, because they've got neutral relationships with the Romans. Very um, very unlikely that they're going to want to move away from that. So they're going to end up in a fight if they move up into this region here. And because there's the opportunity to intercept, that makes all of this a lot more tricky as well. So it means that they're going to be at risk if they move up into here, because they could be at risk of interception, and it's going to be risky if they move up into here. We see that they're actually, pardon me, that's not quite right. They're enemies with the barbarians, so we can see there's a barbarian fleet sitting in port at the moment. So the barbarians would need to move it out, but they can do that without any movement cost at all. So actually, that last one there, we should upgrade to a closed, because that will take them into direct conflict with the barbarians in their next turn. In this turn, they would be okay to move up into there, but when the barbarians' turn comes round, they can move that fleet out, and a battle might take place. So really, really risky. It also means that just in terms of the way that the Roman and the barbarian fleets can move, that they would even be pinned if they actually moved down to here. And watch this. So barbarian fleet comes out and goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the Roman fleet. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what that means is they're actually going to be pinned all the way around to here. They'll be pinned going all the way around to here. And then after that, what you have to do is you have to look at this barbarian fleet up here, because it can go 1, 2, 3, 4. So what that means is that then they're actually pinned all the way around all of these regions here. They would be pinned all the way around here. So just how large the sea areas are, and how far the fleets can move, you might think, oh, once you get over to here, you're going to be pretty safe. But actually, no, you're going to be pinned all the way around. So you've just got to keep that in mind. Let's see what happens when we actually go off in the other direction. So once again, um, the Carthaginians have a friendly relationship with the Greeks, so we're not going to be too worried. They're not going to prevent us from moving. So we're going to be pinned coming into here. So we're pinned both by this fleet here, and we'll be pinned by that fleet up there who moved into here. And because they can go 1, 2, 3, we're going to be pinned here, and they can go 1, 2, 3. You'd be pinned all the way up to here, all the way up to here. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're actually pinned everywhere that they would go. Absolutely every single region, every direction that they could possibly think to move in, they would actually end up pinned. As you see, to move up into here as well, the Romans might be able to let them in. Sorry, this one actually isn't close, because the Romans, they're neutral with the Romans. The Romans might be able to let them in. So you can see that actually that fleet, not a lot of places for it to go without the risk of it being pinned. It can be pinned by the Roman army sitting over here. So it's amazing just how much movement fleets can actually make, and how much that matters in terms of that movement. So I think one thing to just keep in mind at the moment is that things can change very, very quickly in terms of the diplomatic relations, and that what your fleets are able to do is actually much more limited than what your other things to do. So what you'd want to do here is to accept that this fleet is either going to go into battle, say against the barbarians, or that it's going to end up pinned somewhere. So choose where it is that you'd be happy for that army to be pinned. Hang on a second, guys. So let's take a look at just one more example of the fleets, just to show you just how crazy and chaotic all this can be. Let's go take a look at this Greek fleet up here. So this Greek fleet here, it is up and it is in a port. And at the moment, because they are enemies with the Romans, it is actually stuck. It's actually closed. It can't move out of there without a risk of, well, not without a risk. It can't move out of there without a battle actually taking place. So it is completely trapped in there. And the Romans might actually want to keep that fleet in there, keep it stuck in there. Um, and there's a huge advantage to that, because the Romans would be able to then maneuver this army across what I call the Ide here, and that you'll see that in a future strategy video. So the Romans are able to move that over here, but the Greeks can't do the same thing. They have to move their fleet out into the sea area and battle with the Romans and win before they'll be able to do that. So the Romans, actually, this army here has the opportunity to attack right down that side of the Ides here, whereas the Greeks do not have that capability. So this situation here leaves the Romans at a distinct advantage, because they have naval dominance. So they're going to have to shift this navy if they're going to be able to do that. So you can just see what the implications are there of having a fleet in port. It actually leaves an awful lot of limitations to what you're able to do. Let's take a look at this Greek fleet down here. And what we can see is that at the moment they are at the moment that they are let's come back to their situation towards the end, actually, once we reassess the situation of where we are. If they go up into here, that's going to create conflict there, that's going to create conflict there. In terms of being able to move to other regions, they would be pinned if they moved over to here. It's not an issue with the Carthaginians, instead it's an issue with the Romans, and so they're going to be pinned again, going all the way over here. If they wanted to go in that direction, they're going to be pinned as they head over in this direction here. But as you can see, based on how far the Romans fleets are able to move, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, they're going to be pinned in every direction that they could ever possibly think to move in. And that's by the Roman fleets. That's going to leave them pinned. So that's that Greek fleet there. Is not able to move anywhere without the risk of a naval confrontation by the Romans somewhere. So that's something that you just have to keep in mind, that the fleets, that you getting into a position of being pinned is much more likely to occur. It's very difficult to see how they would actually have maneuverability, um, eh, or in fact for it to be open at all, unless you've got really good diplomatic relationships with everyone. But then if everybody's allies with everyone, then that makes the game a lot less exciting, doesn't it? So that's just to kind of show you what it looks like when we're taking a look at the available options for armies and for fleets, to be able to move around the board and the risks that are associated with that. In particular with armies, it's easy to identify ways in which they have open or maneuverability, to be able to expand into different areas. And you can also see some of the ways in which there's a risk of them getting pinned down, and where you might want to move to diplomacy to try and resolve that. When it comes to the fleets, much more difficult situations. So you want to be able to try and use the fleets, perhaps within bottlenecks, to try and pin other enemy fleets, so that naval engagements have to happen in order for them to move around. And just like as we can see here, that um, the Romans up in this region, up in this sea area here, have dominance. They have a very dominant position when you look at the armies and the fleets together, because this army can hop across here, but this Greek army cannot hop back along there. Um, So in a very strong position in terms of being able to use the armies and the fleets together to be able to pin down other fleets to make the armies much more maneuverable in that respect. Um, so that is just what I wanted to show you in terms of the uh, in terms of movement within the game. Um, I think something to keep in mind is that as I just pull all these back up again so you can have another quick look at these, is that it's not a perfect system. Um, in the space of a second turn, diplomatic relationships can change. Armies can move in ways that are unexpected, and therefore you have to reassess: is this army closed, pinned, maneuverable, or open on every single turn that occurs, because the situation is going to change so quickly every single time, and therefore the available strategies to you will change at every single turn. So you can't just do this maybe at the start of the game and then not worry about it. You have to do this every single turn, and try to do it, towards the end of the campaign phase, or as you're going into the spending phase. If your spending is very clear, then you want to maybe think about what you're going to be doing in terms of your movement, and what's available to your armies in the next turn. Uh, so thanks very much for watching. If this has been useful to you, please give it a like. This might be a video that you might feel more comfortable sharing with your friends, because it's giving you a way of being able to look at the board without giving too much in terms of how to actually play the game and take advantage of the strategies. So do feel free to share this with other people. And if you want to have these videos sent to your feed, then do subscribe, and it means that you'll be able to see what else I've got in store for you to interpret the boards in Rome Total War, the board game. So this is Board Through, and here at Board Through, we're all about the gameplay, and I'm going to say bye for now.